So 3ds Max separates the animation set by movement, rotation, and scale. So the movement is red. A rotation, if I rotate this just in this axis, come on, baby. Why aren't you rotating? Whatever. I've done a rotation. I'm going to turn on F4 to turn on the wireframe just to see. Now they are made independent of each other. So I made the movement keyframes here, but the rotation keyframe that I've put here doesn't affect these two movement keyframes. It only affects the original movement keyframe that it automatically creates at the start, the original rotation keyframe. So overall, what the animation will do is movement-wise, it'll bop up and down, but the rotation is constant over time. Okay? So you can see that's constantly moving over time. If I then go and delete these keyframes, to delete you just click and drag, select them and hit delete. It will just only keep the rotation keyframe. So the rotation keyframe is unaffected because they're separate away from the movement keyframe. Let me undo. Similarly, Control Z to undo. Similarly, if I now go and add a scale keyframe, let me add one here. It doesn't begin scaling only from this keyframe, it begins scaling all the way from the start, because there's no other scale keyframes to override it. So it'll start scaling immediately from the start. So if I wanted, for example, to go up to here, sit here, and then scale from here, I would need to set a keyframe here. And to do that, you just hit set key. Or do you not? Why doesn't it set a key? Oh my god. Add a key. Oh, this one, sorry. Set a key here. And it should give you all three of them. See that? So a set key is essentially a lock frame. So a set key says, at this frame, I'm going to set it so it is exactly in this shape. So whatever I do from here doesn't affect any of the keyframes before the set key. So if I rotate now, or I'll scale actually, it should go up, go down, it keeps rotating and only scale from the set key point. So if you want something to do something before it does something else, you always lock a set key at the end of it, okay? You can also individually delete keyframes. Notice that the keyframes don't show here anymore. They only show keyframes of what you're selecting. So if I select this, then it shows keyframes. So if I want in here to be like, actually, I do want it to scale all the way from the start, I can right click on this one and select just the scale of it and change it. Change the time from it. I can also delete it for delete key and delete scale. So I'll click on that and now the scale is deleted and it's just big. It doesn't have an initial scale though, so I just need to scale back there. So now it scales all the way from the start.
When you're right clicking there, is that all the different properties?
It is all the different properties. So let me just undo that and show you what the right click has. So that's all three. Movement, rotation, and scale are in this keyframe. So let me right click on it. There is X position, Y position, Z position, X, Y, Z rotation, and scale is just a solid scale because I scaled in all three axes. So it's just a single scale. Let me just show you here. It should, if I only scale in the Y axis, it should, my god, there we go. It should let me, no, it only controls, it keeps scale for some reason. It used to show you X, Y scales, but I might have to click into it and yeah, individually change the values here. I'm not sure why it's like that only for scale. It used to show you all of them. Cool. Also note another thing. Whenever I rotated the sphere here, it was off axis. So when I used the Y scale tool, it didn't scale sideways. See the wireframe? Its axis is here, but it's scaling along the world axis of Y. If I don't want that to happen, I'll just delete that. Go back up here, and here where it says view, this is what reference coordinate it's using. I'll set that to local. So now it should scale locally on itself, and it doesn't kind of warp anymore. It just scales locally by itself. Does that kind of make sense? So if I delete everything, it will not delete. I need to undo everything. And delete all these. Delete this. So if I wanted to make a bouncy ball, I would start with my first frame. Have auto key selected, and I'm gonna do like a very short anticipation frame, so it's really small here. So it's just this, squishes up, and you can also change the squash coordinate, the squash method, sorry, to it's right now in uniform scale. If you keep hitting the scale tool, it goes to this one, which is a squash. So you see what happens when I squash, it squashes out instead of only scaling in one axis. So basically, when you squish it down, it scales outwards. Okay, so that usually is annoying, and usually I find people have problems with that. But in this case, we actually want it, so it squashes down. And then we can squish it up. And you'll see it gets thinner as well. And I can also copy these frames here. So it's going up, and I'm gonna copy this frame where it's still normal. Hold shift and click and drag. So squash up. I want it to stay up here instead. Squish up. So you see what it's doing? It's keeping this shape, but because I moved it up, it's doing that same normal shape up there. I'll squash it a little bit. So. And I can copy this one. And copy the final one. So if I press, oh, I need to save this. If I press play, this should, and it looks okay, but it's a little weird because the timings are a bit off. So in order to fix that, I'll just have to move these around. So I'm going to move these closer so they squash a lot faster. Just close together. And these close together. And you can just select them by dragging and just moving them along. And that should hopefully look a little more realistic. It stays a bit too high up. So I'll just move all of these closer because these are the falling frames. Is that okay for people? Alright, so first step, just try and get a ball animating. This is the same process as it is in Unity, but we're just doing it for a ball. Now when you open up this is the keyframe animation. If you click onto the left here, there are these curves here. And if you understand curves, I don't expect you to, but if you understand curves, you can use them to control the movement. So for example, the red is your movement, blue is your scale, and yellow is your kind of like rotation. So if I grab these and kind of change the scale up here, you can see how it changes. So it holds up there a little bit longer. And you can use these scales to kind of tweak the movement. And they have little handles at the side as well.
Have you copy key? Can you copy key?
Yeah, you copy by selecting, click and drag in here to select, and hold shift and click it to copy the key.
Yeah.
Control C. We're creating something called stupid physics. We're trying to just copy the frame rate. So you just shift, click and drag. What you need to make it squash, is it?
Maybe that's not true.
Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly what I'm going to do now. Just wait till everyone gets ready.
Sorry, you were right, but that squash thing, you saying you right, this is the change to the squash.
Yeah, click and hold on it.
Click and hold.
And you should see the squash. Yeah,
Thanks.
so the third one.
Cheers, thanks guys.
Sorry? Yeah, like just keep them rotating.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think most people are okay for me to go to the next step. Or do you need like a little couple minutes? We good? Just give it up. Okay, so right now, as you can see, I have all my animation on 30 frames, which is about a second. I think it's on 30 frames per second by default. And it has 100 frames of animation. And I want it to loop this animation. So to loop an animation, 3ds Max doesn't care about the animation, it just cares about this timeline. So essentially I need to make the timeline only 30 frames, and it'll just keep looping the animation over and over. So the way I do that is, let me just pause the animation. I'm just going to move this here to make sure it's exactly 30 frames. It is, oh my god, why are they all different? It is one of these guys, but I need to, oh, it's here. They moved it here. Oh god. Okay, in 2016, it'll be over there. In 2018, I guess it's over here. Time configuration. And it will show you frame rate. Frame rate, this is NTSC. We should actually probably change it to PAL, because I don't think it really makes a difference for us, but why not? PAL is the TV. This is probably, you guys are probably too young for this. Do you remember NTSC and PAL? Yeah? NTSC and PAL. The different TV frame rates and stuff. We're all PAL. Yeah. So what?
HDTV.
Yeah, exactly. It's irrelevant now. I guess it's allowed it for whatever reason. There's your frames per second. You can see by default it's 30. So my 30 frames is 1 second of animation. You can increase this obviously. The speed that it's going to play here is how fast it's going to play. So if I want to slow down the animation or speed it up, it's down here. And I want real-time animation. Loop is on here, and this is my start time and my end time of the animation. So if I go here, start time is 0, end time, I can change this to 30 frames because I have 30 frames of animation. Hit OK, and if I press play now, it'll just keep looping that animation. This is really handy if you want to really check your animation and make sure it's good. If you hit it down to like a quarter time or half time, That's really good as well, so you can just see what it's doing at each frame and just make sure, like I can see now, that one's not too bad, but it's kind of like squashing a little bit before it should. It's squashing before it hits the ground, so I might like edit that. Back to full time. So is everyone's looping okay? Yeah? No? Anyone's not looping okay? Well, maybe if you're paying attention.
Just admiring the bounce next to it.
So here's another trick as well. If I have this and it's 30 frames, as I said, that's that's a 1 second animation. If I went, actually, I kind of need this to be a bit faster than this. It's taking 30 frames to do this. I prefer if I could do this in 25 frames. There's two ways I could do it. I can manually go and select all those frames and squish them back down. Or I can do this thing, click back on it, rescale time. If I click on that, it has all this stuff here. So my start time and my end time is basically like 0 to 30 now, because that's what it is. It's 30 seconds. But if I told it, please rescale my time to 25, should automatically do all the rest of the stuff. And click rescale keys to whole frames. Okay. And boom, it is now squished down. So it's like 5 frames shorter. This should be a little bit faster now. If I press play now. Yep, it's a teeny bit faster. So it's a little bit more animated. So sometimes the difference between like half a frame, or in this case like 1/6 of a second, can be quite big. It's like when you look at it, you don't really notice it. When you put them side by side, you'll notice that they are quite different. And I can prove that by basically just copying this one. Just copying they should have the same frames. Do a copy. They both animate. Oh no! Oh yeah, okay, that's the thing. So if I want to copy this, because I still have auto keyframe on, when I copy it, it's gonna remember the keyframes that it had before, which include position. So because it has a position keyframe, it tries to go back to where it was, because that's the position. So if I want to do a copy like that, I need to turn off the auto keyframes.
There's something you can do with that in Unity as well. Sometimes I find that as well if I'm not make something and duplicate.
No, like you can't. As far as I know, as at the moment, yeah, you have to make it. Let me just rescale this one to back to 30, so we should be able to see the differences between them. And if I press play, they're like, wait, that didn't rescale. Did it rescale? Oh, it's rescaled both of them. That's annoying. Okay. Oh yeah. On this, it's over here.
Beside that little like triangle angle thing at the bottom.
Yeah. See start time and end time? So I don't know what your end time is. 30, is it? Yeah, 30. Thanks, sir. So yeah, if you're in 2016, the time configuration is that's base, no? The opposite side.
Yeah, yours is on the next one.
Oh, yours is like here.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, I'm leaving you do that for like a couple minutes, and then we'll show how to do separate animations. Yo.
For every keyframe, I do that much faster, right?
You what? Sorry.
For every keyframe, I do that much like. You know, I think why we should
Oh, you can do it your way. You can lock each keyframe. kind of a safer way. Sometimes you don't want to lock because sometimes, let's say, for example, I have no rotation.
Yeah.
But if I want to rotate from here to here, if I have a lock in between, you can't because it'll lock there and not go here. That's the only reason you might do it.
This.
Oh yeah.
It's like this, I like intros. The tree is hard. It's like if you like watch this video. Yeah.
Like, see this?
You see the actor.
Oh, the squishy arms. You don't know.
Like this one in particular, I was like, what? It's not even that bad. It's like
Oh, man.
the stretch. Like, did you see someone like Lucio squat and stretch like crazy? Oh my god, it's really really bad. Look at his leg.
Did
you ever see like the old
space kind of like in a Mass Effect or
The Disney
then
version.
you're going to be able to
Try to send
top
me
of
motion
top of
Yeah,
like,
go away.
so you get a big picture. You get to rotate like
You'll hear this one.
Oh,
Check out this fella.
Oh,
Oh my god.
But the way you want to find something for their control,
Yeah.
they do it really nice enough to get the hard around it.
Yeah. It's got to be like.
should do, yeah.
Did
Did you just Google slow down Overwatch intros?
This one's called Body Horror. The Body Horror.
Also, like, you know what I mean? Do something like that. I don't know if I want to plan because it's not square.
Oh, that way it's like
super
exactly.
Yeah, like look, this is really really terrible.
You have to like still.
We definitely need the music for this.
Oh, is this like when they're overstretched? Oh, this
It's 2 minutes, it's worthwhile.
Is this where they put different characters Have you ever seen they take like a different character's model and they just control the animations of everyone else?
And its gun teleports to its hand as well.
It's just legs.
Yeah, I didn't notice this one either. Alan shows me this.
Gain some motion.
like it with his hitbox
Yeah, that's why their hitboxes are so screwed
Yeah,
up.
like it's would be.
Yeah, I don't know if they still were, but in the old,
like the hitboxes.
the hitboxes they were linked to the goals. So you would. And then they took it away, so this way now you have emotes where you sit down and
Yeah.
shoot over your head or something.
It's gonna be alright. Oh my god. Everyone just gets swayed.
Oh god.
I wonder why they buff up his arm.
Yeah,
I actually don't know.
When she jumps up.
Oh, say so.
Yeah, her leg is.
Ah!
Oh my god.
Oh, it's like it. Oh, I wanted more.
Have you seen the one class where they put like different character models over, like they'll put like Junkrat over everyone, go through everyone's like.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like terrifying.
Was it there's the one with Roadhog doing the little dance and stuff as well when you skin it together? Can't
It's so
remember.
bizarre looking, and their faces just break.
Alright, so the next step I'm gonna do is I have this one animation here. That's great, but let's say I want a secondary animation. So I have an animation of a ball being happy. Let's say I want an animation of a ball rotating, like moving. So what I'm gonna do is I have the animations going up to here, and I want to finish off this animation. So I'm gonna lock it off, and I'll just do the key there to lock it. That locks it there. Sets a movement, rotation, and scale frame there. So that's locked. Now, if I go to the time frame, let me set a new animation from 31 frames to, let's say, 60. So those frames that I made are still there. They're just hidden off to the side here. So 0 to 30 is still here. It's just shoved off to the side. And I can start a new animation from 31 to 60. So I'm going to lock 31 first. Let me just lock it here. And then that way I can go here. Let me just do a rotation. What is it? 360 rotation? I'll go to the last frame here and do. Oh, remember to turn on auto key. Don't be a stupid like I was. Okay, 359. And then I'll just copy this frame. Now, there probably will be an issue here if I just press play. It should do, yeah. You see the way it's rotating and then slowing down? So it rotates, slows down, and then speeds back up. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't rotate like constantly. Yeah. So that is where I do need to go into my curves. I need to open up my curves. Open that up. Where is my... What? Where is it? Where's my rotation? Oh, there it is. Oh god. Okay, if I select them, that's my rotation keyframe. So if I select these, and up here, I can set it to linear. If I set it to linear, now if I press play, it should rotate linearly. Because by default, it does a curve. Remember the whole slow in, slow out thing? By default, it automatically makes it slow in and slow out. Because for most animations, it's good. But when we want a rotation like this, we actually need it to be linear. So I should be able to play, and that should linearly, yeah, rotates linearly. Looks like it's just completely rotating. There's no slow in, slow out, okay? So we try to do that, and then we can import to Unity and separate out those animations. Oh, actually no, we'll do a different animation before that. And find a texture online and just apply it to the ball, just so we can see it rotating. Because if you don't have a texture, you won't see it. And be careful as well when you're in here, because I've auto frame on, it's going to animate my material change as well. So let me just turn that off and it won't animate. Actually, waves. Waves. Have you tried waves? I think waves.
Yeah, with the animation.
But now, you can say so. But you can do waves and walls like the other vortex stuff. Like if you go down the body, at least it didn't use
So I started in like 2015. I remember using it in 2015. But then I think we lost it.
I just know you can't do it. At least the last week, right? Just wait.
It's like something on the popular. You ever see it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What's the name? Does it have a different name?
No.
Yeah, turn off the animation and then
Oh, guys. Also, you can if you want to exercise.
the rotation and just select one. Yeah, like that may control one. Set time. That's 3D. That must be shaders. Model this is. Why are you so mental? Why are they so insane? It's crazy. That makes no sense.
Is it one of the two look like what the
Shader.
No.
And then hang on.
The Dragon Ball game?
Yeah.
So like you don't have super, you choose it and just the countertop.
Dragon Ball game?
You guys okay? So you are it should be this already. Yeah.
Still kind of got to look for where it starts. How do we know? I'm also
We wouldn't be assessing stuff anyway, just
Oh, sorry, dude.
Take that time.
Actually, who's class?
Yeah, 40.
I mean, that's what they're for. That's what they're for. Do, 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 do. Anyone need a hand? We all good? Oh, it's not too long here? Okay. So I just want to reiterate that the movement and scale keyframes are completely separate from the rotation keyframes. So if I have this kind of squash and move up frame, and if I want it to happen loads, I can just keep copying that, and it shouldn't affect the rotation at all because they're completely separate. Oh, well, I need to squeeze it back here. But they don't affect the rotation because they are completely separate. Yo.
Is there any way to make that strengthen your bottom bigger?
You can drag it up like this. That helps. But in terms of bigger, no, not unless you have less frames in it. Because it has to show you all the frames.
Hey, you drag it?
You are looking at a bunch of frames. Yeah, you might want to zoom in to Yeah. Go Discord and be like, hey Bash, can I have the rubric? And then get us pizza. It's like the stage where it's not funny anymore, but it's gotta be funny.
It'll be funny only our 10-year reunion.
Yeah.
Not that make it 10 years.
Wherever your best man is for your wedding, you. Oh, is it? You should definitely.
Well, this is it.
Oh, I see.
Cool, and I'm gonna lock this one as well. And I'm gonna do a final animation just to show you another thing you can do. This may screw up on me, but I hope not. So I'm on frame 61, and I'm gonna go to 90. Lock this frame here, and there is a thing we can do. Just gotta turn off animation, make sure this works. And I'm going to copy the sphere. And I will do a thing called there's there's a bunch you can do, but there's like distort and noise and stuff. I'm going to do a noise on it. And Turn on fractal, roughness, and just the strength. And I'm just going to try and scrush it up a bit. Alright, so it's exactly the same, right? They're the same amount of polygons. They are the same geometry. And because they're exactly the same, just one is distorted, I can go to this one and do a thing called a morpher. Morpher. And what a morpher allows me to do is, if I drag that out, if I click on this, I should be able to select, right click, sorry, pick from scene, and I'm going to pick this one. So it knows that it has this sphere. So I'm just going to set a key here, set a key, and if I go up to here, set another key, and I'm going to set this morpher. Just make sure it's 0 here. And if I go up here, set it up. So that's the animation. It should animate from there to there. It's pretty cool, eh? I can make it, actually I'll do it here. So halfway through it'll animate fully, and then towards the end it'll go right back to normal. So basically this weighting here, this number, is how much of the other object it wants to try to be like from 0 to 100%. So if it's 100% like the other object, it's basically going to be a copy of the other object. And if it's 0, it's going to be not at all. So you should be able to see that animating. You can see the number. So it goes up to 100, back down to 0. And this should be a separate animation. And Unity should be able to read that one as well.
You do that with animation or like
No, it has to be the same. I think it has to have the polygons in the same areas on both sides. So more or less a similar mesh. Now the other option for doing this is if you have a face animation. There's two ways to do a face. You can either have loads of little bones, which is one method, and you literally just move the bones and it moves the face. It's a lot harder. Or you can do a face, and then in Mudbox, you change the face to have loads of different expressions. And then you have loads, exactly. And they even have ones where it's only the right eyelid. So like here will be like right eyebrow, left eyebrow, and you can control then each little part of the face. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So once we have that, we're going to be ready to animate. So if you want to try and do that, remember you'd have turned off the auto, make a copy, screw it up, and then add the morpher. I'll do the whole process again. So essentially make a copy, auto is off, make a copy, distort my copy. I'm just going to use, actually I'm going to use wave now. There's loads of different distortion methods. Woo! And in the morpher, right click, pick from scene, and turn on auto to animate it.
I don't know, I'm just so used to it. See, I do a lot of work in this, like it's just
You only have a few you should be able to just make it really strong. No, I don't. Maybe you need to answer all of them. Okay, this should be okay. Wow. You find one part, so. So you can also mix morphers. So I have these two spheres, and I'm mixing both of them, and going back down.
Actually, better there.
Morpher's so much nicer than mine. You might need to set it to 0 there. No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. It's just when you hit the lock is actually to say that's over.
Guys, when you lock a keyframe, it doesn't lock Morpher keyframes. For some reason, it's only movement, scale, rotation when you lock it. So you need to set a 0 Morpher keyframe, and then your. So you need to set one with 0 there. Yeah. No, it's just in here, automated here. Yeah, just like move it up and back down. There you go. You set a 0 keyframe. Oh yeah, auto needs to be on. Why is my noise so shitty?
Oh, we use wave.
Oh, you use wave?
Yeah.
Still though. Oh, now it's prettier. Okay.
I can't do that though. Like I would never I've never seen it.
Oh, this one was. They always just check.
No. This stuff is like. It's just
I had a long distance one to go to the Lego yesterday. Fucking good. Yeah. So bad for head shit.
Do you still have the clip of that charge?
I don't know, like that's what I'm saying. Like it's saved them, but they're not. Unless it's somewhere else, where else now you go to look at them, like. I had them all saved and they were all my own.
Like, like Amazon charge last night.
It's just.
You didn't even like watch that. You got one.
I think
You took one person.
Yeah.
Your area checked.
Just a tip from there. Like, and all you had it better play before that. Like I did like 3 or 4 lads, but it was like from actually not just one dude, like from doing all this shit. Like.
Original. Oh, we should update automatically. So, hopefully this should work. We go here and I go and update this one. It should update. Well, it's doing 2 things. Wait 1 sec. If I turn off this one. What? Why isn't it? Arc. Oh, auto's off. Huh. Okay. You might need to repick it. It should update. I don't know why it's not. Oh, here. Sorry. Reload all morph targets. Yeah. No worries.
Oh, so funny. Watch out.
Okay, we've got 15 minutes left, so let's try and export this for Unity. What I'm going to do now is go back to my time configuration. I have 90 frames worth of animation. I've got 3 animations of 30 frames each, but I need to see all of them. So I'm just going to go start 0 to 90. And now I should be able to see my full 0 to 90 frames. I can hide these guys, I don't need them. So my 0 to 90 frames, I'm just going to do a quick playthrough, make sure they are okay. Perfect. Rotation and squashy squash. Cool. All right. And then with that selected, you what? Is it okay? I just basically set the time configuration so I can see my all my animations. And then have it selected. File, export, selected. It's going to export as an FBX.
Does it do that weird with like the materials now in here?
Yes, if you had auto key on while you were putting on the materials, it will animate your material as well.
Oh.
So you need to turn it off when you're adding. Now we need to make sure For geometry, we have smoothing groups and all the normal stuff, but we also need to make sure the animation is ticked. Otherwise, it will not export the animation. So we need to have that ticked. And then, okay, it's going to give us, no, it's no warnings. Okay, cool. And I should be able to go to Unity and import it. Oh no, I don't have. Okay, I'll just make a new one. Yeah. Animation, just to make sure it exports the animation. Cool. And in the Unities, I'll import that FBX. Cool. I'll just import the texture as well to make sure they both show up. Cool. And if I go to the model, click on, this is the important model. There's the model there. I can drag into the scene to have a look at it. If it's too big, you can change the scale factor here, the same as before. So if I change that to 0.5, it'll be half the size. Apply. Cool. And then animation is, I can press play. It should have all my animations. There we go. So it's got the bouncing, the rotation, and the screw up scale. That's fine. So to separate them out into the clips, here on clip, this is number 1. If I click on this, I'll change that into bounce. That I know from before it was 0 to 30. And I know that it loops, so I'm going to turn on loop time. And I should be able to press play then. There you go, and that loops. And then I'll add another animation using the plus sign. And this one was rolling. This was 31 to 60, I think. Loop as well. Let's see if that works. Yeah. And the final one was, I don't know, what do I call it? The matrix. That was 61 to 90. Also looping. Cool. And then hit apply. And now I have 3 separate animations here. So for this this ball that I exported into Unity, I can add it already has an animator in it. I just need to make a controller. Create animator controller, ball controller. Drag that in here. And on ball controller, I'll just add those animations. So bounce, roll, the matrix. And I'm just going to do a bool. No, actually I can't do a bool. Yes, I can. Yeppers. So from bounce to roll, it will do that if yeppers is true, and it'll go when yeppers is false. You guys are familiar with this animation system, right? The animator? You all know about transition times and exit times and all that stuff? That's great. Don't need to do any of that. Oh, this is gonna, no, I can't do a bool. It's gonna have, I do need another bool, but I don't want another bool. I want to do it like in, I just want to float. That's why I wanted to float. Because I can just do 1, 2, and 3. Or int. Int will be fine. No, I don't want you. Go away. Best int key in is wrong. Okay, so I should be able to just press 1, 2, and 3. It should work.
Sorry, just real me and stuff.
Oh, dude.
I missed your name for that.
Animated is there. Should play bounce by default. Yay! Where is it? Playing bounce by default. If I change the in to 1, should roll. Yay! 2, it should go screwy. Yay! 3 should go back up. Yeah, no, it's not. Oh no, I made a mistake. Well, it's working anyway. Animations are all in there, and that's basically how you do it in Unity. Now we are basically at the end of it. For next week, I would like you to have modeled for me. You should have like almost finished by next week at the start of class. We should have a robot model that we can use for animating. The reason why I want a robot model is because, as I said before, it's all joints and all separate pieces. We're going to do a robot model first, and then after that we're going to do a human or a humanoid character model with smooth skin, because that'll be a lot more difficult than the robot model. But we'll do the robot model first, and we'll get to grips with that. A biped robot model. Okay, actually, do you know what? For the robot, I don't care what it is. It can be anything. I would prefer if it was biped. It would be easier for you. But if you want to be cray-cray, go ahead. We'll basically do... we'll basically do like an animation on it. This is the one I did last year with my class. But we'll set it up so it should do a bunch of animations. So it'll do an idle, it'll do a silly thing, and it'll walk as well. We'll set that up. This was actually not that hard, I want to say. I just basically copied what the Overwatch video had. You probably don't want to do something as complicated as this for your first one, because I did have a lot of issues with that. You need to think about where the gun is and where it's going to rotate and stuff, and there's a lot of little things. You probably just want a robot that just does robot things. But we'll be able to do something like this. So just think about, like, it'll have bipeds, so it'll have arms and legs, and just think about it having maybe like a shoulder-mounted cannon or something that you want to, or wings that open up or something like that. And just have them modeled, and it doesn't have to look beautiful at all. We're just going to use it only for animation. Okay? It does not have to be textured. Don't care at all. The one we're going to do properly is the character one at the end. We'll do that properly. But for this one, is just straight up, we just care about reading and animating it. It needs to be one object. Now, the only thing that needs to be really important is the pivot point for the robot. In mine, it's like directly between the feet. The pivot point's directly there. So it's like standing directly on top of its pivot points. That's the only thing you really need to make sure that it's exactly correct. Any bits that you want to rotate, they should be separate. So like if I want to rotate the arm, it should be separated away from the body. Okay, so it can be different elements, but they're all the same object. You guys should be well aware of that stuff from your edible body stuff from last semester. Last year, this year. So yeah, so we're gonna animate this, and then we'll move on to a skinned character, like where you actually bend the arms and stuff. Cool. All right. Thanking you. No worries.
I got it back right. Oh yeah, I remember I was free. I had it molded.